800-824-5131. 800-824-5131. That's 800-824-5131.
Hey, listen to me. I'm one of the credit cards in your wallet. I'm about to explode and pop like a balloon. You're using me and my brothers way too much.
Your credit cards aren't the only ones annoyed. It's your paycheck that doesn't have enough to pay everything. Save your credit cards, your paycheck, and yourself a lot of PAIN. Pain. Call the debt helpline now, not tomorrow, right now. Our experts will show you how you can cut your interest rates and your payments on your credit cards in half. Credit card companies have special assistance programs designed to help you. Make this 100% free call right now and learn how you could get out of credit card debt. Here's the number.
800-406-6569. 800-406-6569. 800-406-6569. That's 800-406-6569. Paid for by Zero Debt.
The Lou Information Station presents Elevate and Lead, where real stories meet real conversations. From business breakthroughs to personal pivots, we're digging into what's driving change and what it really takes to lead. Now, here's Jennifer Bardo, Kelly Chandler, and Michael Chandler.
Hello, and welcome to Elevate and Lead. This is Mike Chandler. Happy to be back in St. Louis after visiting the lovely town of Cleveland last week on some business travel. I heard that Kelly and Jennifer, you guys did a fantastic job. I listened into the podcast, so thanks for not burning things down. I know that Eli took over for us and helped control the narrative last week, so it was a good conversation. And thank you for the quick shout out last week on my background and the spotlight and being a enlightened man, I think was the conversation, Jennifer.
Yeah, that was the word I called you, enlightened, because you're able to share your vulnerabilities and you're able to show up authentically. And I think that's a unique gift for a man, and hopefully more will be inspired to show up authentically like yourself.
Yes, thank you. Well, I've learned that being transparent and helping other people understand my struggles has helped them. So being transparent like that helps people grow. So happy to continue to share the insight there.
And I'm going to take over the mic to wish my Mike a very happy birthday today. Happy birthday, Mike. You want to share with the audience how old you are? I know how much you like talking about this.
Yep, just turned 41, so it's great.
We're the same age.
Yes. Turned 41 for the 10th time, so
Sweet.
Do the math on that. So, I think one thing Kelly had asked just for, last week from a business perspective, it was a strategic planning session. Everything went super well. We focused on our future state go-to-market strategy, new offerings, how we price, how we contract, how we need to do things differently in operations, and got some great alignment and moving the team forward and the businesses forward for the next couple of years. So it's essentially a 3-year long-term plan that we came up with. And I think the most important piece is, as we've talked about with a couple of our guests, is just that we got really focused on niching down and focusing on some areas that we could grow versus trying to be everything to everyone. So very, very good, but long days.
Sounds like it. And I think that's essential as a business owner to really understand you can't be all things to all people, So that's cool. Well, I just want to do a quick recap of last week's episode with our guest from UHY. You just feel the energy radiating.
Yes, that duo, Renee and Marianne, they were fascinating to work with or talk with because the energy level was there. I mean, you can just tell neither one of them had degrees in what they were doing, but they worked their way up through, just observation and being passionate and then creating these networks. They were great to witness, and you could tell that they get along so well professionally and really enjoy each other's company. So thank you, ladies, for joining us last week. We really had a great time. It was just easy.
It was fun. It was easy. And the words that come to mind for me was grit, authenticity again. And the fact that she had a relationship for as long as she has that has carried her through another organization. I mean, that just shows you the fact that she adds value to those that she serves. And I love that she's able to share that journey, that life isn't always easy. She worked her way and earned those titles. And I can't wait to see her become partner.
Yeah, agreed. That was pretty cool. And then part of what we've been doing in the past few weeks is having other guests nominate people to bring onto the show. And one of those was Mike, is it Bisley?
Bisley, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I just found out his wife is coming to the event on Wednesday for Grit. So you'll meet her there.
Oh, very cool. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes.
Very, very nice.
She nominated like 6 people and they keep coming.
Yeah,
so I'm
right.
really excited to see the connections that she's bringing into the community and to our station.
And I'm proud to share with everyone that we have guests already booking into February of 2026. So it's so exciting to see that momentum. You know, people are engaged with expressing, how they're leading and elevating others. And it's just really cool to see. So we thank the listeners and our guests that we've had so far on helping spread the word about what we're trying to share here on the station. So.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, Mike, do you want to go back to your Elevate segment?
Absolutely. So I get the privilege of leading our Ask and Elevate segment for everyone out there who may be new to it. Remember, it's really generated by those of you listening. It's questions and comments that come in either through the text line or through our email, which we'll get back to in a minute. But the latest question came in from Larry out of St. Charles. This was inspired back from the Samantha Cook session on July 8th. And the question, the tee up is, Samantha talked about leading with empathy and not needing to be the loudest voice in the room to have impact. I'm a quiet leader too, but I feel like I'm constantly overlooked in meetings because I'm not the most vocal. Any advice on how to lead effectively without changing who I am? So I think that's a super important question from Larry. I'll kick it off and maybe give some direction there. Those that are typically the loudest in the room aren't always the most stable leaders. Sometimes they're seen for specific reasons as a subject matter expert. That's their focus, that's their drive. I think, Larry, one of the biggest things is how do you come prepared to that meeting with a key question, a key insight, a key pivot, something that you can support and do so for 5 minutes of the meeting versus 60 minutes, and just show up as someone who's grounded in the topic, has the ability to pose a question, pose a pivot, not doing that in a negative way, but trying to redirect the conversation or help the team uncover something that they got lost in or need some clarity on. And then secondly, I would say leadership happens 90% of the time outside of the meeting room. So how can you follow up, be intentional, provide feedback, connect with people after the meeting to figure out how to move something along, not in a political way, not in a passive aggressive way, but just to bring alignment to the team. And I think honestly, some of the best leaders we've had in the room with us are the ones that aren't always the loudest. They may be more quiet, but they're there to guide, lead, and help make decisions when the going gets tough, and that often happens outside of the meeting room. So finding a way to stay intentional and follow up with people, build relationships, and you don't have to be the most vocal person in the room to be seen as a leader. So Jen, Kelly?
Yeah. And just as a quick recap, if you didn't know or you didn't get to listen to Sam Cook, she's a CFO of Brinken, which is a huge general contractor agency here in St. Louis, and they work outside of St. Louis as well. But for me, listening to that and seeing that she kind of sits back and observes, I think that's a true skill because you're listening. So then you know the right questions to ask. You don't have to take up that much space, and making sure you're really poignant in regards to what you have to share is relevant with the concepts. And I think a lot of the best leaders actually do sit back and observe what's taking place, how to engage in the right questions, but then making sure when they do speak, it's powerful and profound. Like that's how I would describe Sam Cook. She watches when she should strike. She's like a vicious tiger. She's like, I'm just going to sit back. I'll be in that tall grass, but when I need to step up and speak, I will be competent and I'll be able to take up the pace. So I don't know. I think active listening is really critical, and you don't always have to be doing all of the talking. You can sit back and share that mic. So
I agree 100%. And as someone who's on the quieter side, I think it is so valuable to sit back. You can not only take in what that person who's leading and speaking or kind of being the loudest one in the room, you can also read the room, see how people are responding, or, even with their facial expressions, see the support and maybe people who are uncomfortable. I think that's very important in assessing change within a company or whatever the topic may be. And you can follow up after the fact with certain individuals and connect dots, beyond that meeting time, which is very critical. So
Yeah.
that would be my 2 cents on that one. So yeah.
All right, fantastic. So Larry, thank you for that question. And just a reminder, as I mentioned prior to this segment opening up, you can submit your questions through LinkedIn, and that would be through Elevate and Lead at Lou Info on LinkedIn. So you can connect with us, submit something through a direct message, or you can connect with us on our Gmail and submit your question like Larry did, and that's Elevate and Lead Info at gmail.com. So thank you very much, Larry, and keep the questions coming, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah, and hopefully he gets a little bit more secure being that quiet leader, because he has powerful in his presence of observing. So I am so thrilled to actually highlight one of our first sponsors of the radio station and our Elevate and Lead podcast station as well. So I'd like to introduce to you Audi. So are you ready to electrify your drive? Audi Kirkwood invites you to experience the all-new 2025 Audi G6. An Electron and future luxury EVS is here. For a limited time, take advantage of 2.99 APR financing for 72 months and an QE Electron that has high performance with smart financing. Plus, explore a great selection of our Audi favorites, including the all-new 2025 Audi Q5 redesigned and ready to impress.
And don't miss out on up to a $7,500 federal tax credit available on select EVs and plug-in hybrids. But hurry, this credit expires September 30th. Now's the time to plug in and save. Go see Neil. We know Neil very well across
Yes,
the
we
street,
do.
Neil Westfall, and the entire crew at Audi Kirkwood on Manchester Road, or shop their entire inventory online at audikirkwood.com. Audi Kirkwood, expect the exceptional. Thank you, Audi. We are very honored and grateful for your sponsorship.
Absolutely. And from the car industry perspective, Audi is one of those places that accepts women. Like, get in there, women. They're not going to intimidate you. The sales staff is amazing to work with.
And that's great to hear. And I know that for a fact because he came over here
Yeah.
with another young lady named Carly that he
Yeah.
wanted to see if she could have a radio show.
Yeah, he's a huge advocate for this community.
Yeah. So
And she's here. She's
she
with
is here.
her
She's
now.
going to have her own radio show.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. Do you remember what it's called, Eli?
It's Practically Neighbors. It's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays right here at the station at 5 p.m.
And if you don't know Carly, she actually was with the Battlehawks.
Yes, ma'am.
Good luck, Carly. We're excited to hear more about your show coming up. Well, next on tap, we are extremely excited to have a wonderful trio from Washington University. They are the CHIRP team, and I'm going to explain what that means. It's another acronym amongst many in academia. I'm sure they would agree. They are from the Center for Holistic Interdisciplinary Research in Psychedelics. As you can see, CHIRP is easier to say. So welcome today. I'm going to quickly just introduce you by name, and then I'm going to have each of you give a little bit on your bio, maybe some fun fact before we dive into some of the questions. So today we have Dr. Ginger Nickel, Dr. Rebecca Lester, and Dr. Lael Kabasa. Welcome to our show. Let's start out with you, Ginger, if you'd like to explain what you do and maybe a little bit of fun fact about yourself.
Let's find the right space from the mic.
Yeah.
So hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and talk with you guys. We really love the idea of the show and getting to know you all. So I am a professor of psychiatry. I am what most people in the research industry, I suppose, in academia would call a clinical trialist. And so what a clinical trialist does is think about design ways to test how treatments, both medical and behavioral and physical, how those work, and kind of to chronicle the journey, I guess, of healing throughout that process, and ask questions that help us understand how we can make treatments more effective, how we can disseminate them and make them accessible to the right people when they need it most, and also to establish that these things that we're testing are safe and really do what we think they do. And so that background led me to get board certifications in child and adolescent psychiatry, obesity medicine and in eating disorders. And so my early career was sort of started out trying to understand obesity and eating disorders. This was 20 years ago when people were not putting those two things together. And the healthcare industry, if you will, was not necessarily poised to treat obesity, but really more to treat the outcomes of obesity. And so I have a lot of experience, understanding, things like how do institutions put forth their values into communities, and then how do they, create policies and ways of learning and knowing and teaching that really extend those values. So that led us to psychedelics. And the reason I got into psychedelics was actually, as a teacher. And we have a research training program where we had a really fantastic trainee who was super interested in this area, and not a lot of other clinical trialists that know how to understand pharmacology and the brain effects and how do we measure the effects of medications. And so that was where it all started in 2018. Right as we sailed into the pandemic, we got the proper licensure to start testing psilocybin, and now have been part of several clinical trials and doing our own clinical trials, including the first precision functional brain mapping study of what psilocybin does in the brain. So we actually took people into an MRI scanner while they were on psilocybin and imaged what was happening in their brains. And that was a really, really interesting journey for everyone involved, and was sort of the precursor to this center where we realized this is complex work. It's not enough for a psychiatrist to be doing this. I needed help. I needed other expertise. And these two wonderful people sitting next to me were the first people I thought of and already knew and had worked with a little bit. And so that's how we all started.
Very cool. And I know for all the listeners out there, after we, share this episode, you can view those brain scans, the kind of the before and after, which is fascinating. It's one thing to talk about it, but to actually see it, before and after is awesome. And we'll share that website so they can see it. Thank you for that introduction. Any fun fact you want to share before we pass the mic?
Oh, wait. Wasn't any of that fun?
You're a comedian, obviously.
Oh, no. Well, I will say we're going to see Dead and Company this weekend in San Francisco. So I guess that's maybe a little bit fun.
Wow, I bet you'd be really popular there if they knew who you were.
So I try to keep that on the DL.
Yeah, we'll keep that. Yeah,
that's work.
You want to relax a little bit. So thank you very much. Rebecca, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi. Thank you so much for having us here today. It's great to be here. I'm Rebecca Lester. I'm a professor of anthropology at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. I am a medical anthropologist, which means we are interested in exploring the role of culture in both illness and healing. And in my work, I've been very interested in how our understandings of recovery from mental health challenges can sometimes actually get in the way of people getting better. So my most recent work has been in the field of eating disorders, which is partly how I know Dr. Nickel. So when I came on board with CHIRP, I was very excited to see what an anthropological perspective could add to some of the clinical and implementation work that we're also doing. So it's a great pleasure to be working with these two.
And just tell me quickly, the anthropological piece of it, that's more how we view ourselves within, like in existence. It's a little bit deeper rooted into who we are as a human being.
Yeah. I mean, there's different kinds of anthropology, but the kind that I do is interested in that. Yes.
So fascinating. And do you have a fun fact to share with our listeners?
I do. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be an Egyptologist.
Never heard of that.
Yeah. So when I was the summer after 5th grade, I decided I was going to teach myself how to read hieroglyphics.
Wow.
Which I did not succeed at, but it was a fun summer trying to figure that out.
My goodness.
I was a little bit of a nerd, but
yeah. Well, that's I've never heard of that term. I mean, I've heard of hieroglyphics, but not an Egyptologist.
Yes.
Very fancy.
Yes.
Well, I think you're doing great work now.
Oh,
so
well,
you
thanks.
obviously pivoted in the right direction. Last but not least, Leo, and it's pronounced Leo. It looks like Leo, and you have to explain where you're from as well.
So, no, thank you so much. It's a great opportunity to be here and to be with my two great colleagues. I'm Leo Cavazza. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I'm a social worker by training, professor at the George Martin Brown School of Social Work. And my work actually is on the other side where Ginger left off. Of how do we bring those treatments that have shown effectiveness, that have shown promise? How do we bring them into the community? Really figuring out how to make this treatment accessible and continue to have a high quality. So I'm a health equity scholar and an implementation scientist, which means how do we get treatments that we know work out into the community for the people that most need it. So that's been sort of part of my work. We've worked together with Ginger on some obesity work for people with serious mental illness, people with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And funny enough, Rebecca was in my dissertation committee back in the day, long time ago, not that long, when I was a student, a doctoral student at WashU.
Wow.
So we have good connections.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
So many years down the way. So obviously you like working together. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so one thing too, just to highlight this team before we get into some more of the technical details, this is super compelling for the St. Louis marketplace and for WashU. This research, started back in the 60s and 70s. Is that right? Earlier. And then it kind of ramped down as some other things took foothold. And then over the past 10 years, it's really started to surface again. And what you're doing at WashU and with the broader network you have, I mean, there's not a lot of other institutions and or big universities out there doing this. You're one of a handful. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's about, as far as I know, there's about 10 or so other universities involved in this work that have centers and are doing some of the work. Johns Hopkins, University of California in San Francisco, NYU, and others. And it's starting to get more play around several universities and groups and a lot of industry as well.
That's fantastic. And it just goes back to, again, St. Louis has a heartbeat in a lot of different industries and areas. And this is super important because it can be helpful with people with chronic pain, with mental disorders, anxiety, depression. There's a lot of research to unpack and figure out how these naturally occurring substances can really help people in a controlled way and in a good way, like you mentioned. So if you haven't heard of it and haven't seen it, I definitely invite anybody out there to go out there and take a look and get involved with the community. And we'll talk about that before we leave the show on how to get connected with this team and support it. But very good work going on. So congratulations to the team in the room.
And we'd like a fun fact, Leo.
Oh, actually, a fun fact. I one time had lunch with Danny DeVito and his wife.
How did that happen?
Yeah, long time ago at a ski resort somewhere.
How did that happen? I mean, did you say, "Hey, let's have lunch"?
We were sitting down, and they sat down next to us, and we had a whole lunch.
That's wonderful.
With them. It was fascinating.
So cool.
Yeah.
It is cool. Well, fantastic. One thing that's amazing is we sat down not quite a year ago, back December of 2024, with this same team, and they were much longer form podcasts where you could sit down and talk for hours. You really could on this subject because there's so much applicability, throughout the world, not just in the United States, anywhere, and then different disease states where it has applicability. So it's fascinating, and I've seen so many articles since then, and really more recently, and we'll dive into that in just a minute and talk about what you all have been up to. So I think we are, let's see. I'm going to jump into, maybe Jennifer, would you like to hop in and ask a question about
Sure.
to Rebecca?
Yeah, Rebecca. So what inspired CHIRP and the interdisciplinary foundation? And now that your work is evolving, is there any one field or perspective being more dominant? Or how do you see this all being balanced and taking shape?
Well, our interdisciplinary team is one of the most unique and exciting things about CHIRP. It's somewhat unusual in this landscape that we were just talking about of research centers. And, psychedelics are complex and transformative medicines that one of their hallmarks is that they really impact how people experience themselves and experience the world. And we felt it was really essential to build expertise in different domains in order to attend to that, as well as the issues of how do we make this into something that can get out into the community, or how can we facilitate that? How can we make sure that people have access? So as you heard in our introductions, we each kind of have expertise in a different component of that process. And I would say we have a really solid balance among our approaches, and it's something that we deliberately strive for. And it's enabled us to accomplish an enormous amount in our first year, which is really exciting, from running a clinical trial to supporting researchers around the country and things that they're doing. Developing therapy protocols based on anthropological insights is something that we're working on. So that is all, converged to make a really vibrant community. And we all also genuinely like each other, which is a big bonus.
Helps.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And like I said before, last year, you're like the three-legged stool. You have a very important balance to all of you. And we were just curious if anything has shifted since then. But it sounds like it's all pretty balanced still, which is fantastic.
Well, more to come from the Chirp team in the future of mental health. We'll be right back on Elevate and Lead.
The Lou Information Station, a whole new way to enjoy content created just for those of us in the St. Louis area. It's a whole new way to advertise and promote your business. Reach out and find out just how different we are. If you're tired of one-sided advertising offerings or your traditional media rep trying to shove digital marketing down your throat, visit louinfo.com and click on advertising. Or email partnerships@louinfo.com for more information.
The future of driving is here, and it's electric. Introducing the all-new Audi Q6 e-tron, where luxury meets cutting-edge performance. And now at Audi Kirkwood, drive one home with 2.99% financing for 72 months. Efficiency, power, and style, all in one extraordinary SUV. Visit Audi Kirkwood on Manchester Road or online at audikirkwood.com.
Lunchtime just got a whole lot better at Hot Shots Sports Bar and Grill. From mouth-watering wraps to loaded quesadillas to bold, flavor-packed sandwiches, Hot Shots has something fresh every single day, along with your favorite wings, burgers, and pizza that you know and love. And don't sleep on those Hot Shots tacos. Plus, if you gotta be in and out quick for lunch, Hot Shots has you covered every day starting at 11 a.m. Find your nearest Hot Shots Sports Bar and Grill now at hotshotsnet.com. That's hotshotsnet.com.
LouInfo.com news headlines. Brought to you by Brown and Crouppen, 222-2222.
This is your LouInfo.com news update. I'm Jared Cirillo. St. Louis still dealing with very hot and humid temperatures. A heat advisory previously in effect for the entire region was extended through tonight. The wife of an Afton resident briefly detained by the Israeli military in Gaza says he is now free. Barbara Subiri confirmed her husband Bob was released Sunday after an aid ship that was sailing in the Gaza area was intercepted by the Israeli Navy. Bob Subiri was part of a contingent of 20 people trying to break Israel's blockade and deliver food and humanitarian aid to Gaza. St. Louis County Executive Sam Page's office is being investigated by the Missouri Attorney General, the AG, looking at mailers that were sent out this year about Proposition B. That proposition would give the county council power to fire department heads appointed by Page. For the Lou Information Station, streaming 24/7 at louinfo.com, I'm Jared Cirillo.
Now, louinfo.com weather. Presented by STL Sports Central. St. Louis sports. Anytime, anywhere.
Here's your louinfo.com weather update. Hot and humid again today and tomorrow. Extreme heat warning still in effect. We're headed for the upper 90s with sunshine today. The heat index about 110. Upper 70s and clear for the overnight hours. We'll be getting sunshine in the morning on Wednesday. Scattered afternoon thunderstorms, mid-90s and really humid. A little cooler on Thursday, right around 80 with a few showers. I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton for the Lou Information Station, streaming 24/7 at louinfo.com.
STL Sports Central is St. Louis's first all-digital sports network, and it's easy to find on YouTube. Catch the Randy Carricker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Videos and written content from Bernie Miklis, Card Central 365 every day, plus post-game shows after every St. Louis sports team plays. It's all at your fingertips on YouTube and online at stlsportscentral.com. Check it out.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision. It should not be based solely on advertisements.
At Brown and Crouppen, we get that after an accident, money's tight. That's why we offer so much for free. First call, free. First consultation, free. stuck at home or in the hospital, we'll come to you for free. So call Brown and Crouppen, where we don't get paid unless you do. And your first consultation is free.
You've seen this. It's brand new. Are you online?
Oh, hey. Oh, so you're new here.
All right, let's get cracking.
Okay, then maybe you should check out our website.
You're insane.
Well, you download songs illegally from the internet.
LouInfo.com. The Lou Information Station. 590 AM KLIS, Wood River, St. Louis.
Our origin story began.
Back to more of Elevate and Lead with Jennifer Bardell, Michael Chandler, and Kelly Chandler on the Lou Information Station, streaming 24/7 at LouInfo.com.
Welcome back. We are back here with Elevate and Lead to ask more questions to our CHIRP team. So the next question we have is Mr. Leo. We would like to understand CHIRP. It is grounded in equality and have been uncovered with new scientific insights into the potential impact of psychedelic therapies in undergoing communities. What's your feedback there?
Oh, definitely. So part of what we do is trying to figure out how to get these treatments to those that most need it. So we're doing different kinds of components here. One is to prepare our workforce. So who's going to deliver this care once it's out in the community? So we've engaged in workforce development and trying to think about how to integrate psychedelic therapy into social work curriculum, into nursing curriculum, into psychiatry. Those are the workforce that are delivering care, mental health care in this country. So how do we prepare that workforce to do so in a high quality way, but also in a culturally competent approach? So training the next generation. The other component is that people are now talking about the care models out in the community. Right now, a lot of this is clinical trials. So people come to a hospital, they come to a medical center. But once this gets legalized, once this gets approved by the FDA, then we need to start thinking about how do we deliver this out into primary healthcare centers, in community mental health centers. So how do we go about doing that? What type of models can we develop? Can we borrow from existing approaches? So those are some of the research questions that we're trying to sort of figure out. And partnering with communities to see what's the need and how can these treatments help them address those needs.
Well, and I would imagine that there's a good form of access just from a cost perspective too, when you start looking at rolling it out, not just training the teams that need to deliver it, put it in the communities. There's the access of cost. Does this become something that is unreachable by the average person? So I'm sure the whole cost structure of all this comes into play too as well, right?
Completely. And actually, one of the cool things that we're learning recently is New Mexico, which is the latest state that has provided legal access to these medicines, is beginning to really think very carefully about Medicaid. How can Medicaid actually pay for some of these services, not only the medicine, but the therapy around it? So we've started some collaborations with people in New Mexico around how to make that work. And basically what the states need is evidence that this can actually happen, that this can actually be delivered, and that people can benefit from it. And that to me becomes a really important aspect of this.
And that's important too, because I think this is not just about taking a pill or taking a prescription at some point or however it gets distributed. There's therapy that needs to be connected to this so that you're brought through the treatment, the journey, the overall aspect. And so it's not just a one and done punch of taking a pill, right? I mean, that's important to understand too.
That's exactly right. And part of the therapy is preparing someone for the journey and having the right supports, having the medicine session, which can last from 3 to 6 hours. So having someone supported. And then the real work starts in the integration. What happens afterward? What have you learned from that journey? And how can then you bring that to your everyday life and address the need and have some support systems? And so people have been doing this with facilitators, and there's some work out there for other peers, for peer special people with lived experiences, group settings as another approach. So really thinking through how to develop this whole package and care models around psychedelics will be critical.
So just to lay the groundwork for the listeners, 3 states have it approved, right? So it's Colorado, now it's New Mexico, and then Utah. Is that the other one?
No,
Oregon. I'm sorry, Oregon. Yes, those 3.
And Texas just passed a bill to begin to do research with ibogaine for veterans, actually.
Okay.
So there's 4 states that have been in the mix. Massachusetts has a bill out there that didn't get passed, but is working through it, and California as well. So there's some movement here around the state levels.
And that additional education, you're part of another group. Do you want to explain that quickly?
Oh yeah. So we're actually how I got started with this was a pilot project 2 years ago of training social workers and nurses on psychedelic therapy. And that program was very successful. It was really interesting to see this type of treatment. And now he's extended into a national program called the University Psychedelic Assisted Therapy Education Program, UPEP, and now has 33 universities around the country that are participating. These are all faculty members in social work and nursing. And the whole goal of that program is actually how to embed curriculum into existing clinical programs of social work and nursing so that the next generation of practitioners actually get trained and are knowledgeable about these medicines and treatments. So it's a really cool approach. And the other cool thing about that program is that it's all open access. So the information that I develop at Washington University, someone can use it in another university, and we can share resources. We can share our curriculum, our PowerPoints, and all that stuff. So it's really building a community as well of practitioners and educators.
And part of your role is to help bring a voice to the underserved.
Yeah.
Have you been engaged in education that's like bilingual or anything? Are you doing things like that where you're furthering that opportunity?
Some of it has been. There's a huge need for bilingual Spanish-speaking facilitators, so that's a really important area. Actually, I just got back from Puerto Rico. I'm beginning to do some connections with the Puerto Rican community there, and there's a whole collective of psychedelic assisted therapists in Puerto Rico. I'm beginning to think about how to bring this to other areas in the United States. So it's a really important component of what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you. As we've said before, we could talk about this all day, but we're gonna pass the mic to Ginger for just a second. Thank you, Leo. So when we spoke and got your information to come on the show, you were really excited to talk about innovation and community. It's a big part of your work. And how are you seeing the science translate into real world application? And what are you excited for about over the next 12 months with everything that you have going on?
Well, I mean, there's just so many questions to answer. And so for people who are interested in science and who are curious, it's like a gold mine. And I think in some ways a little bit of an embarrassment of riches in some ways, because there's so many questions to potentially answer and not enough people in time to do all of that. And so that's one of the big goals, and one of the reasons that we decided we need a center is so that we could create the infrastructure to help people start to put their questions into practice and research studies. And also to do that in a way that's pragmatic, because it took several years for us to get started to sort of, build things from the ground up. Even in a place like WashU, where there's so much infrastructure already that is really actually tailored to help people do research and learn how to do research. But even in that environment, there was a lot that had to be built. And so that's a big part of what we want to accomplish with the center, is kind of getting other scientists and researchers from all different disciplines to kind of collaborate and to incubate questions. And so we actually had an event earlier this year that Leo sort of, put together. He has the expertise in this area, but using systems science approaches, which get a bunch of experts in the room with different expertise who would probably not otherwise talk to each other, to think about things in terms of systems engineering. Where are the feedback loops that are unhelpful that we need to sort of like disentangle and figure things out? There isn't a model for how we bill for and pay for treatment that is both a medication and a therapy. But in psychiatry, we know that pretty much all of the medicines that we use are better. They work better when they're delivered in combination with the right kind of therapy. So it's not a totally novel concept. But in terms of how we think about systems, we have to invite expertise from each of those systems to tell us what are the challenges, and then get together and think about where are the biggest problem areas and the lowest hanging fruit in terms of opportunity for us to work together to sort of craft a plan out of the negative feedback loop. And maybe if you could talk a little more about that, but that is one place where we've learned a lot. We're still sort of like unpacking all of the, things that we learned from that, but bringing people who, lead the pharmacy program for Missouri Medicaid, for example, to come and sit at the table with us and talk to us about what are the challenges that they foresee in making this, treatment available. What sort of evidence would they need to be able to show to the legislature to be able to fund it? What's a reasonable price? Who will they negotiate with to figure out what that price will be? How will they make the different parts of Medicaid talk to one another? Because there's a pharmacy program and then there's the clinical services, and they don't always integrate. And that's just one example of places where we need to facilitate conversations and gather evidence. But, being able to then target our research priorities so that we answer those questions or help people answer those questions that will help get this into the world sooner in a way that's safe and to the people that need it the most.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're talking about making systemic change to the system of healthcare and distribution and therapy and all of that, and you need a lot of varied voices in that conversation to bring together how that all comes together. Plus, you guys are running the actual research on the use of psilocybin in a clinical setting to understand how it affects depression and any other types of things going on in the brain and the central nervous system. So that's a big plate of activity over the next 12, 18, 24 months, right?
And I think the other thing that is really exciting to all of us about psychedelics is that they are really powerful treatments, but they also can be tools that teach us how the brain and the nervous system work, how it becomes damaged and how it heals from damage. And so what we're really excited about, and I think the really unique thing that our center does that no other center does quite the same way, is really marries the neuroscience, like from the cell to the network to the human being, then to the systems in which these treatments are going to be delivered. And so bridging that whole, big span of questions from neuroscience to implementation science, and really figuring out how we can also optimally use psychedelics to teach us things. So it's just a really unique set of questions that we get to now think about and answer with psychedelics. So they're tools and treatments all together.
And I can see that progression since we last spoke to now, because we talked a little bit about commercialization, and at that point it was kind of off the table, right? You can tell you've had a lot of conversations since then just to even get a little step closer to that, and making sure it's done the right way. You have the opportunity to create like the gold standard based on everything you're doing, and you're at the horizon. I can see why you're so excited to continue the work.
And my wheels are spinning because I have a lot of connections in my head in regards to local leaders in the Medicaid industry that I would love to introduce to you, just to have those conversations and bring more innovation to the table.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that this has really opened up for us, is that there are communities and wisdom in places that we would have never imagined. And I think Rebecca's insights in this area have been really helpful in crafting like what conversations can we have and how could we facilitate those. So we've started some outreach initiatives through the center, but I have to say, like, every day, and it's probably the same for you guys, every day I get emails and people calling who are super interested in just understanding what we're doing. They're not like, can I be in your study, or will you hire me to be on your team? It's really just, can I be a part of this conversation? And so I think making, taking those openings and figuring out how to best make those inroads into the community. So what you guys are doing here is like really helping us understand that. So I look forward to more.
And from that blue collar perspective, I'm really excited to see more about the chronic pain and how that helps, because I can think about my dad and the arthritis and just the wear and tear in your body as being a construction worker. So I'm excited to see all the progress that happens.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it was like one day I woke up and I'm like, oh, something hurts that didn't hurt before. And like, it's just how it goes.
Age sucks.
Right? Pain is like a universal human experience. And you can see how much damage it's done. Treatments that are addictive that we maybe didn't understand fully as they came out onto the market really harming people. And so, yes, there's a lot of hope that psychedelics can potentially not just treat the pain, but like fix the underlying causes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Back to the central nervous system and all the things that you don't realize that are controlled between the brain and those things, right? It's pretty remarkable. So what you talked about community partnerships and what you're doing there. You obviously talked about them in a general sense. What types of community partnerships are you missing today or feel like you could amplify and start picking up and gain more traction? So where are the gaps and what types of community partnerships are you looking for?
Well, when we first started this, we were trying to think of all the different communities that we would need to engage, right? Because you want to be planful in how you structure what you do first. And one of the places that I had thought about initially was, our business community and our entrepreneurs. That is a stressful, failure-laden, initiative, and you have to keep going. Right. And then there are all kinds of, work groups, essential workers like healthcare workers. We talked about this sort of before the show. People who are performing essential roles in society who are traumatized by the work they do sometimes, or are just really depleted and burned out. And that can turn into depression and suicidality. And these are folks that it's not super easy to just train up a new generation of people to take on these roles. We need to actually identify and prevent as well as treat these problems. And we need to help people heal quickly so that they can go back into doing the work that they find rewarding and that really is needed. And so those are two groups where I think we could definitely use, I would say, like, we could definitely use help in developing, integrated outreach. And we've kind of started that with the folks that are doing research in these populations at WashU, and actually nationally, we've sort of started to make some outreach. But I think, within our own community is where it starts, and understanding the wisdom and the needs in our own community is really important. And so having conversations, facilitating dialogue. And so we have a seminar series that we've started where anyone can, tune in and join. But it's still early days. We kind of trying to figure out what the format of that will be. But I think, bringing people to just have live conversations and answer questions and talk about their experiences will be really important. I know that you guys have probably better ideas than I do.
Yeah, and I think part of actually how Chirp got started was looking at our own community. Who's doing this work? Who's interested? I had worked with Ginger for 5 to 6 years, and we had never talked about psychedelics before. So it's really figuring out the space for people to come in and begin to be part of the conversation. And same thing with Rebecca. How do we bring all of this expertise together? The other component is actually populations that are at need, that will benefit from this treatment. So the Veterans Administration. We don't have good connections here in Missouri with them. That would be wonderful. We have colleagues at University of Missouri who are doing some of that work. Danny Adams, who used to be at our center, now is a assistant professor at the University of Missouri in Columbia, and policymakers here in Missouri. There's an interest for this. They see the need. Our mental health system is broken, and this is another tool that can be used, not for everyone, but it could help in some other things. So figuring out how to create those connections, bring those partnerships, and learn more about what's being done here in Missouri in the Midwest as this is being done. So Chirp can provide that opportunity, that space for bringing people together and having those conversations with us, and then seeing what happens. That's how things get started.
Well, I'd love to connect you with AGC, a local association here in St. Louis that's tied to the construction industry, because I don't know if you guys are familiar with construction, but that's the highest industry for suicide. So there's a local leader named Brandon Anderson that works for AGC, Association of General Contractors, and he speaks on a national level in regards to suicide prevention. So I think there could be incredible conversations that could take place in regards to the work that you're doing and the work that he does to really help construction workers be prevented from suicide. So I'd love to make that intro.
Another one that comes to mind is we interviewed Nick Smith from the Monarch Fire Protection District, and all the he manages all these EMS workers. That's every day. You talk about trauma and I'm sure there are other groups as well, but that's another great connection where we talked about on a separate podcast, the mental health challenges that they have to, kind of pack away, and then they unpack it at some point, but how do they do that in a healthy manner? So that would be another great connection. So our wheels are spinning.
I'm excited. Yeah.
No, I think these are fantastic ideas. I'm excited to pursue these connections that you guys are talking about.
So we got a few minutes left, and maybe one important discussion point would, you guys have made progress over the past 12, 18 months, and as you've been assembling things, and you got through one of your annual reports recently, and you achieved more than you thought you were going to. What kind of outcomes have you seen with the research so far? What's coming out that you can speak to? I realize some things are still in a setting that's clinical and you're not there to expose everything, but what are you excited about in just the research that has come out outside of this discussion of community partners?
Well, I will say, the first study that we did was just in healthy people. And the richness of that data set is continuing to be explored. And so we've had, really interesting observations from that data. We used methylphenidate, which is Ritalin, as a control condition because psilocybin makes you a little fidgety and increases your heart rate just a little bit. And so we wanted to kind of control for that. And a stimulant like Ritalin is helpful. But what we learned from that data, another really kind of entrepreneuring trainee looked at that data and said, I wonder if I could compare this Ritalin data to the data that's in our, our child development study that's like 10,000 people. And many of these kids with serial brain imaging who take stimulants for ADHD. And comparing these two data sets and learning that actually Ritalin does to the brain what a full night's sleep does. Contrary to what it's approved by the FDA to treat, which is attention and concentration, it actually doesn't, affect those networks as much. And so I think those are the sorts of things like, how do we be good stewards of the data that we've already collected? And how can it help us craft questions moving forward? We're really excited to be looking at models of cellular aging as a mechanism of mental illness that's also a treatment. And so thinking about psychedelics, which may have really powerful anti-aging effects that we can study, all the way to then what's the participant or the patient experience? And what are the mechanisms within an individual and their experience that really impact how they heal? There are some newer molecules that are less hallucinogenic that maybe don't have the same effects. And we're all kind of questioning, like, how will healing happen with those medicines when there isn't an experience to pair it with? Will the experience have to be something that we think about differently? Because experience is everything. That's how you adapt and learn and change.
That was wonderful. And these are great conversations. And I'm really excited to see who you guys nominate to have on this show. If you guys want to contact them, you can reach out to the Center of Psychedelics, WUSTL.edu. Thank you for this episode on Elevate and Lead. I'm excited that we are going to have Demi Blue, Natural Nails, a local entrepreneur that I've had a relationship with over the past few years. And she has grown her business to be in all types of storefronts. So she's going to be on next Tuesday at August the 5th, Michelle Robinson. So we look forward to seeing you then. You're tuning out of Elevate and Lead, and we will see you next week. You've been strong for everyone else, but let me ask you, who is strong for you? I am Jennifer Bardot, radio personality, author, and publisher, and the founder of Grit Association, which stands for Growth, Resilience, Intention, and Tenacity. What is Grit? Grit is a movement, a sisterhood, a space where ambitious women grow, lead, and thrive. This isn't just leadership. This is transformation.